Okay, hello everyone. How are you today?
Hello.
I am here with very special guests. I'm here with Beth, talking words, Bree and Fry from PontiFacts Podcast. Ladies, introduce yourself.
Oh, hi, I'm Fry.
And I'm Bree.
This is the first episode of my Creator Spotlight series that I'm starting. And so I have some questions, and then we'll take questions from the chat. And let me see. Hold on. I'm going to figure out. Some people are here. Hi, Christina. I just gave you the blue wrench of power to mod the chat because we are talking about stuff relating to religion, so we need to prevent the trolls.
That's always the way.
Mm-hmm.
So talk a little bit about your show. Like, what is it?
PontiFacts is a papal history podcast where we're ranking all of the popes from Peter to Francis. So that's 266 popes in total, not including anti-popes. And we go through the life of a single pope in every episode. We contextualize their papacy. We talk about the history happening around them, their contemporary history. We contextualize what's happening. And then we rate them based on a bunch of ridiculous and very, very subjective categories that we've come up with, including how well they were at poping, how scandalous they were, how they impacted the secular world, what their face looks like, if they're a saint. Lots and lots of ridiculous questions, too.
Was one of your taglines saying who is the popiest pope to ever pope?
Which pope is the best?
Which pope is the best was an original theme song that never entirely materialized.
It's there somewhere. It's floating around Ben's head. Every once in a while, he'll sing it to me.
So what made you decide to do a podcast about popes? Was it something specific that sparked an interest, or just a general love of history, or?
Well, I think the fact that it was doing a podcast is mostly Fry's doing, whereas the topic is mostly my doing. Mm-hmm. I am a historian anyways, but I specialize in the Italian Renaissance. I look at the Medici family in Florence specifically. But that entire time period, nothing happens in the medieval or the Renaissance period without the popes. Countries are made and broken. Kings are elevated and deposed. All of this happens on what the Pope decides is legitimate. Wars are fought based on what the Pope says is legitimate or not. So I noticed that there wasn't a lot of material looking specifically at that tide of flow of the popes in particular, because they are such a lasting line and a lasting power structure. And then I started listening to Rex Factor, and I started yelling at Fry about how much I loved Rex Factor. Mm-hmm. And at one point they made a comment about how someone could do it with popes, and they jokingly called it Pope Idol. And when I said that to Fry, she's like, oh, well, that's what we need to do. And then it was, when are we going to start our podcast? When are we going to start our podcast?
It's true.
Yeah, I just binged Rex Factor. So I heard about when Totalis Rankium popped up, and then I heard their comment about the popes, and I'm like, yeah, that already happened. And I just binged all of it. I'm just in the past week caught up to the most recent episode of Rex Factor.
And they're amazing. Like, they have covered it with so much detail and so much humor. And I was like, this is the perfect format, because I just love to yell at people about history. And usually that ends up being quite funny. I don't like to do it in a very sort of dry setting. And Fry is literally the funniest person I know. And so it became a
You're
natural.
always so nice to me.
Your comments are great, though.
Well, and the comments that she makes on the podcast are exactly what our conversations look like off camera, off microphone. We just yell nonsense at each other all day.
So we touched on why you chose the format, because Rex Factor was a big inspiration. Explain to everybody what your ranking categories are.
Do you want to do it, Fry?
Oh, do you have a list?
A list?
I mean, okay, so what? The first one's Pavidum and Phallium, and that's the papal impact on the church and how they did stuff for the church and, priests and whatever, Oh God, words are hard.
That's where you include how many priests and bishops were ordained.
How many priests and bishops, like what sort of rules they imposed, what sort of new structures they developed, just ways that they helped to make the church grow and thrive.
So much Easter.
So much Easter.
Easter forever.
And then, so the next one is the Fructus Prohibitum, which is how bad they are, all the scandal they had. We haven't had an awful lot of popes with an awful lot of scandal, honestly.
Yet.
Yet. We've been doing this for 2.5, almost 3 years now, but we haven't had a ton of popes in that time period need to be high on the scandal rating. And then it's Seculari Impactum, which is the secular impact. That's beyond the scope of what they did for the church and what they did for the people. Originally, it was more Rome-based, but we've been more branching out now with history-wise into farther-reaching areas.
Yeah.
I think Franks and Anglia and all of them. Don't thumbs up at me.
You're doing great. You got all of them.
I listen. Then it's Facium Sanctus, which is exactly what their face looks like. And that has developed differently over time. We started off with Peter, who's got so many pictures just depicting Peter. And then it's just a hole until you get to like Leo. So, and I mean, I know there was a few with the official paintings before Leo, but I feel like once we got the Leo, then we got way more stuff to look at. And then it is how long they reigned. I forgot what we call that.
Tempus Pontificus.
You're right. Tempus Pontificus is how long they got to be Pope. And then the Papal Bull category is if we ourselves give them a Papal Bull, like if we thought their story was amazing enough. The one that you're going to hear coming up next week made Brie mad.
I can't even.
You forgot one.
Oh, I
The
did.
Canon bonus
Canon
round.
bonus round.
Canon bonus round.
It's a bonus round, so we can talk about it whenever, right?
It is. It's a bonus round. Anyway, canon bonus round is if they're a saint or not. Papal Bull is what we give them when we feel like they've done a good enough job to warrant getting one of those. It's either yes or no. The canon bonus round saint is yes or no. And then I think that's the whole score, isn't it?
Yeah. That covers them all. And the thing about the papal bull that kind of sets it apart in this is that it doesn't matter what you score. You could be a really low scoring pope and be so incredibly terrible that we want to tell people about you anyways. And so you can still get a bull and be a terrible pope as long as you're memorable and you have a super big impact on the way that we've enjoyed the history. So it's not always the highest scorers. And there are people in the top 10 who don't have papal bulls. So
that's you being salty again.
I mean, it's that, but also
highest. And the papal bulls will eventually go to a playoff round, right?
That's the idea. Following the Rex Factor format, where they had a finals and a semifinals, and then to determine who was the Rexiest monarch, we will decide who is the popiest pope who ever poped, and they may win over St. Peter, so they'll be in charge of the pearly gates from now on.
I remember there were some feelings about Peter.
Oh, every time.
That's why when I recommend your show, I'm like, you have to be okay with some irreverent humor because
we're not lying. Is the thing.
But I think that's the thing about it. I think that it's a topic that there's so many people that they're afraid to talk about it because it's so touchy. And just like any person in history, there's no person too great or too small to at least have some fun with. And if you can't do that, you're not necessarily engaging with the whole of who a person is. So we're just making that real clear right from the get-go with how we feel about Peter. So no one has any illusions about what's to come.
That's true.
So the next couple questions are kind of research questions. So they're more for Bree. What are some things that were confirmed in your research that you already knew?
Well, the most obvious one, I think, is that papal history is way more interesting than most people would give it credit for. And that's kind of what we wanted to bring to the show. And that's one of the number one feedback we get is people saying, I never thought that this would actually be interesting. I never thought that this would be something that had so many like different aspects to it. Because when you think of the popes, you think of church, you think of masses, you think of what's happening in theology. And we cover that, but that's only a piece of it because these are still human beings who make human mistakes and have human relations and do things that are absolutely wild or just so stupid or so incredibly amazing and brave or whatever it happens to be. So I think for me, the one thing that was really and truly confirmed was it is interesting. And I
had no idea there were so many popes.
And that too, I think that's another one is really establishing, it confirmed how long the church has been around. Because we just think about the church. Yeah, okay, it's always been there. We know it existed in the medieval period, but so did kings, so did emperors. But we have had a pope in existence from AD 30 all the way to this very current moment. And there's lasted
a lot longer than others.
And we know all about the Sede Vacante where we have little breaks in between there, but it's from that point to this point that it's an unbroken institution. And there's almost nothing that really lasts that long otherwise. So it was confirmed to me why the church is such a force in history, because it's there for every single era, every single epoch, every single at any world event. I could turn to anybody and be like, what period of history are you interested in? And I could probably tell them, oh, well, at that time, the Pope was doing this. You know, there's always something.
What are some things you thought you knew that proved to be maybe a misconception or just totally wrong?
My biggest misconception, I think, again, going into this, was about Peter. I thought Peter was going to be so incredibly hard to talk about because he's biblical. And so knowing that and knowing the weight is on that, there's generally sometimes a hesitance to talk about people with any sort of concrete firmness when they're biblical, because people either believe that this, yes, absolutely is 100% true, or this is a book of made up stories, depending on where you fall in your religious belief. So I thought nailing him down as a tangible person to actually talk about was going to be extremely difficult and maybe impossible. And we were going to have to start our podcast with kind of a, well, maybe not. But I that was a misconception. It turned out to be relatively easy to track him down in certain historical documents besides the Bible and kind of work through that. And that was really enlightening, I think, at the beginning. I thought that would be the hardest part.
Mm-hmm. This maybe kind of touched on this on the last question. What are some things that surprised you as you've been researching?
Surprised me. There are certain things about the church that surprised me how early on they show up, like cardinals. I was not expecting to see cardinal priests as even a concept in like the first couple centuries of the church, but they're already established. We already see a lot of the structures that become lasting and long-lived right at the very beginning. And I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to see things like anathema and excommunication appear so early and be so similar to what we see when we start dealing with like cities under interdict in the medieval and Renaissance period, or like the contact between with Islam and Christianity being so early on. Like we have popes in the 6th century, 7th century talking about Islam as it is still like this fresh and burgeoning thing, and talking about the concept of this new religion, and seeing those things kind of intermesh so early was very surprising to me.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised as I've been listening, and I've listened twice all the way through. I think I stopped at the anniversary episode and went back and listened to everything and then caught up again. But how much they how long they debate things. Like I jokingly I threw out Easter, like the details about Easter and just the little things that they like nitpick. Like I was when I was re-listening to the Nicene Council episode and the things that they talk about in there, and I was at work when I was re-listening to that, and they got into some topics, and I'm sitting there and I'm snickering. And I'm like,
are we talking about castration? Yes.
Was that the one where they were talking about like castration and stuff? And I was like, oh, I probably shouldn't be listening to this.
Yeah, that was a surprise. Well, I think every time I throw the word Christology at Fry, I think every time I throw the word Christology at Fry, she's going to hit me because it's been.
I can't hit you. You're too far away.
I know, but I can hear it in your voice that you're thinking about it, and you're just like, oh, I cannot believe we're back here, because we're almost at 100 episodes. And if you look back at the Council of Nicaea, like that's associated with like episode 27. So we've been dealing with some manifestation of Christology for over 70 episodes now. And it's just like you say, that's many, many, many centuries of debating a word in a lot of ways. Will, energy, nature. These are the words that they're arguing about, but they mean the same thing.
Okay. Regardless of score, who has been your favorite pope so far?
Why don't you go first, Fry?
Oh, you're gonna make me go first. You know what? I don't know. Every time I get asked this every time. And every time I say something different, because it's just whatever pope I can remember the name of. Look, I always like Fabian. Fabian's a good go-to. He was an awful lot of fun. You know, I think that I don't know. Let's stay with Fabian.
Great. Fabian was one of our funnest episodes too. I got to throw things like poopy anus at Fry and just like watch and wait for them to stick, you know. So that one was a lot of fun. I think my favorite overall still is Calixtus for a number of reasons. I really liked Calixtus for how incredibly progressive he was for the time. He's so very early on, and he's already talking about things like women's reproductive rights and how second and third marriages can be affected by how we look at the sacrament and things like that. And yet he was also incredibly fighty, and he caused one of the greatest arguments in the church at that time period with Hippolytus, who absolutely hated this man so much that he became the first anti-pope in the history of the church. So there's all of that. And then there's the fact that he still has like this very strong and tangible legacy in Rome, where you can go to Rome and you can actually go to the tombs of Calixtus and you can see how multiple popes were buried there, and like that it's become this lasting memory on the landscape. And so he's really
was that
cool.
one of the things you got to see on your trip?
Yes. I specifically, I was just saying this the other day, actually. I remember being at the tombs of Calixtus on my wedding trip, and I was conversing with Rob of Totalis Rankium. He was sending me messages while I was there, and he just listened to our episode on Telesphorus, and Fry had commented that half of Telesphorus's face didn't match the other half. And so I was at the tombs of Calixtus giggling to myself because I'd gotten a bunch of photoshopped images where Rob had put the two sides of the faces together and made 3 different men out of it. So it's I also have like a great memory of podcasting at the tombs of Calixtus. So weird answer.
Again, regardless of score, who has been your least favorite?
Oh no. I think, look, not score, not content, not anything. So far, Leo has been my least favorite. He took the most amount of time for me to edit. He took the most amount of time for me to QC. He took the most amount of time so far.
Which is funny because
it's like 2 hours long, so I can imagine what you had to cut from that.
Yeah, that was a long one. I think my least favorite still has to be Vigilius, because this is a man.
Second.
Oh, yeah. And he just caused so many. He basically single-handedly made the papacy a joke for like an entire century, because he would be like, this is exactly what I believe. Oh, wait, let me pull that back. Oh, let me fake it that I'm going to condemn it, but secretly I will accept it. And when you agree with me, Emperor, then we'll make it happen. Like, he was a man who was like scheming against his own church, and then backpedaled on that, and then backpedaled on that, and then it was just a disaster, an absolute
disaster. Great secular politician with all the flip-flopping.
Well, yeah, and he threw Silverius under the bus, who ended up like imprisoned and exiled, and so he's made for the 21st century, and that's why I don't like him. So he was a pain.
Yeah.
Fun to research, though.
I remember like giggling when you were talking about Pope Hilarious, because despite his name, he was very serious.
So serious.
He's our party pooper.
A party pooper.
Which just is so on the nose. It's so perfect. I mean, I don't know how that coincidence of words could be any better placed. It was perfect.
I wonder if it meant something different, like when he was named that. Like, was that his birth name? I don't remember.
Yeah, it probably was a reference. There's a saint, and generally they're called Hilary. Hilary was definitely a male name at the time, and so there are several Saint Hilarys that he was probably named after. But when you become a pope, you get the official designated Latin version of your name, Hilarius. So,
who are you looking forward to covering in the future?
Is there anything you're looking forward to, Fry?
When do we get to that dead body?
Soon. It's really not that far away. He's where I'm currently doing research, because I'm a fair bit ahead of where we're releasing right now. He's alive and present. He is not currently the Pope I am writing on, but he is alive and present.
He's
and
alive.
He's
He's
making
not a
his
dead body yet.
He is not a dead body yet. But there's certainly a lot of things that they say hinting towards that, like, hey, if this had happened, maybe it would have been better for him. They just kind of keep throwing that out there. I am looking forward to a couple of different popes. I'm looking forward to doing Sylvester II because I think he's going to be my new favorite. I am looking forward to doing the Medici popes because there are 3 of them and they're from my beloved historical family. And I really want to do Pius XII, which is so long in the future. And I am so glad that it is so long in the future because only in the last couple of years, they've opened the secret archives about him. And just this week, the first book that is coming out of that research is just been announced. And so we're going to, by the time we get to him, we could be having an entirely different image of who this man was. And I'm so excited to kind of do that as a fresh take because he's kind of generally been condemned as Hitler's Pope. And maybe that was a little bit less true. That's the way it's looking. So I'm excited.
Who are you not looking forward to covering?
Ironically, my answer would be, when do we get to that dead body?
When do we get to that dead body?
and I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek because, there are 3 things that most people know about the papacy. And the first one is the Cadaver Synod and that dead body. And so there is certainly an expectation in that episode. There are so many people that are so excited for that one to come. The others being the Borgias and Pope Joan, but to a lesser extent. And so, I feel the pressure to do it in a way that gives everybody what they want out of it, but also does it in a new and an exciting way that isn't just a rehashing of the story that everybody knows. So, and I'm also not looking forward to doing the modern popes because my interest in history generally takes a nosedive off a cliff when we get to the modern era. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, my interest in history has always been like the American Civil War, because I just think Lincoln is just so fascinating. I've been getting a lot into the Tudors in recent years, so that's a time period to see what that Pope.
And one of the Medici are my absolute favorite moment in history, but I have this incredible and enthusiastic soft spot for King Edward VI, who is Henry VIII's son. So I have a lot to say about the Tudors in that regard. So
I emailed Rex Factor, and they're doing the Queen and Prince Consorts now on their series, and I'm like, I can't wait until you get to all of Henry's wives. My one niece just turned me on to Six the musical, so I'm just like,
we were gonna go see that, but when we went to Boston, it shut down the week before.
No, it shut down at Navy Pier the week before I left for Boston and opened up the week after. Like that chunk, we were in Boston, it wasn't playing.
Yeah, I listened to the soundtrack like crazy, and Anne of Cleves on the show, the soundtrack is my favorite. I have a lot of headcanon about her anyway.
A good choice to have headcanon about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because everything about her is from Henry's perspective, and I'm like, when he calls her fat and smelly, I'm like, there's someone else there who is okay. But yeah, that's always been like, and I know they take a lot of liberties, but I did enjoy watching The Tudors on. I binged it on Netflix.
I loved The Tudors as well. It's kind of, we accept that sometimes you just have to have some historical trash, and there is a level, but that one's all right. I liked it a lot.
Jonathan Rhys Meyers. I mean,
can you go wrong?
No, not at all. What are some interesting or crazy things that you've learned about the church or the papacy, the church as a whole?
Do you want to start, Fry? Is there anything that
I don't think nothing super surprised me. Has it? I don't feel like. No, not yet.
She takes everything really well. Sometimes I'll say something, she'll be like, oh, and I could just see the percolation happening about that. But I'd have to say the most surprising thing for me, maybe not the popes themselves, but when we start looking at hagiography and we start dealing with saints, some of the stories that have come out about the saints that we've dealt with are just absolutely wild. And
the oily saints, that was what got me.
Wow, did it ever get you? I like the cephalophores too, which are the head-carrying saints. Like, who doesn't love a person walking down the street carrying their own head? Like, that's just wild and amazing. And I love how ridiculous that all gets. Like, we've dealt with women who have fought a dragon, and that has made them a saint. We've talked about a lot of breasts and how that relates to sainthood. And then, of course, I am obsessed with incorrupt saints. So
hate them.
That's one thing that surprised you. When we started talking about incorrupt saints, you're like, wow, I hate everything about this, and I want nothing to do with it. So.
I already knew they existed, but every time you describe them, no. They can go in that pile of, spawning salmon that I yell about constantly.
It's coming. You can't avoid it. There are popes who are incorrupt saints. It's happening.
Ugh.
And just to clarify, incorrupt saints is when it said that their body doesn't decay after they die.
It's a commentary on the purity of the individual, that they're so holy that they will not decompose
themselves. Okay. I thought it was their body did decay.
Well, and I mean, that's the thing about incorrupt saints, because obviously in most cases their bodies have now decayed. Like Saint Cecilia. Saint Cecilia, when she was discovered, which is also coming up, she was found to be incorrupt, and she had been buried for several hundred years at that point. That body no longer looks like that. So there's kind of a debate
in the tomb.
Well, and that's the thing about incorruption, right? There are saints on display that are considered incorrupt that look very much like sleeping people, and it is alarmingly so. So I just think it's a wild phenomenon. So
if you were to start another podcast, what would a topic be?
Oh. So we played around with a topic, but 2020 kind of threw that out the window.
Yeah. we had talked for years about like doing something with pandemics, and then this happened, and that entirely has lost all of its appeal.
Not as interesting anymore.
No, and everyone's doing it too because it's such a popular topic. Everybody's talking about historical pandemics right now, and it's
yeah.
Like, oh.
I was watching a couple months ago it's a YouTube channel I follow. I don't know if you're familiar with Overly Sarcastic Productions.
I don't know if I've heard of that.
One of the people that runs the channel does a lot of history stuff, and he did stuff about the Black Plague. He's just like, this is so relevant, and I might regret this later. Hopefully the humor will be outdated soon.
Well, and we've managed to get in quite a lot of pandemics in our show already. We've dealt with the Cyprian plague and the plague of Justinian, and of course we're going to deal with the Black Plague as it comes up, and we'll be dealing with smallpox and probably malaria. So,
and then we played around with another idea where we took the medieval depictions and written accounts of like fantastical animals and then tried to marry them to actual animals, which might be fun for a while.
And I mean, I'd love to do a whole thing at some point, probably like attached to PontiFacts when we're done. I'd love to do something about ridiculous miracles.
Yeah.
I found a book recently, and it's like the Dictionary of Miracles, and I'm like, yes, because sometimes they are so ridiculous. Miracle clouds and oil producing saints and bread literally turning to chunks of flesh in people's hands.
Well, and we still have we could obviously go to like the Byzantine leader or
yeah.
What are they called? The popes, the Pope patriarchs, yeah. Over there, the Eastern Church. We could go to them probably.
Oh.
That's logical, but maybe not.
That'd be a lot of work.
Look, you're the person who does all of the reading, so that's not on me to pick.
That's true. No, I think that we talked about that being like a fairly natural.
Would you ever switch roles on a future project where like Fry does all the research and then you're the
How about it, Fry?
I don't know.
I mean, we talked about it once for like an April Fool's episode or something, where Fry would be doing all of the presentation about a completely made up pope.
Or just one of those ridiculous popes that aren't popes, those people who call themselves pope, like I live on my island and I am the pope.
There's a lot of those, and they will
quite a few. There was like 74 when I went and looked on Wikipedia.
Yep. They will all get their due at some point. We've got Patreon specials coming. So.
You gotta read that awful book though.
Well, that too.
Yeah, they do. For everybody watching, they do cover the anti-popes, but it's on Patreon. But it's linked in the description. All of your socials and stuff down below.
They're fun too. We get some weird ones.
What do you do when you're not podcasting? Hobbies, life, if like you want to talk about that, or
you go first, Fry.
Oh, I need to go first? You go first this time.
Okay.
You're more interesting.
I am not more interesting. Give me a break. I am self-employed. I kind of run my own business. So I work in behavioral intervention and exercise therapy with kids with special needs. So that takes up a lot of my time, and it's a pretty cool job. I'm pretty happy with that. It's part of my business. I used to do a lot more fitness-oriented stuff and still do occasionally, but not as much. And my big hobby is something I can't do right now, which is traveling everywhere I can possibly go to, which is also why I'm currently writing episodes for September, so that
You're so far ahead.
Well, at some point the world is going to go back to normal and I'm going to need to get on a plane and go somewhere. So
that's true for like a month.
Yeah, I kind of want to just book a hotel somewhere and tell my husband, have fun with the baby for a weekend. I'm going to go write books.
And I also have 2 corgis that I live for. They're my, my fur children and whatever. So they take up all of my time right now, which is perfect.
Yeah, dogs are a lot of work. I had a German short-haired growing up. My parents have a very high-strung border collie right now.
Yeah, smart dogs are high-strung.
Yeah. That's one of the things I can't wait for when the world does go back to normal, because then my sister and I can go over their house with the kids and she can just have the time of her life herding 3 little toddlers, because they'll be 1, 2, and 3, hopefully by the time the world returns to normal.
I have herding dogs and they would love that.
What about you, Fry?
Okay, well, I usually stay home. I've got 3 kids. I make sure that they stay alive. I run
That's a full-time job in itself. I know.
Yeah, I run a cross-stitch blog on Tumblr that has a swear word in the title, so I won't say it. But that works. I do that with our other friend, Bree and my other friend. I do that with her, and that's been going pretty all right. That's fun for the most part. Otherwise, I play a lot of Dungeons and Dragons.
That too.
Yeah.
Those dice come in handy.
They do.
Your show.
Not recently.
This is my dice bag.
Holy crud.
It is cool.
So that's why she's always pulling out a different one for every pope that goes to divine intervention, because there's that many.
Yeah, it's definitely full. I can just pull dice out.
That's also where the jumping spider was living that one time.
He may still be in here.
Still! Get rid of it, Fry.
I haven't ever emptied it out and cleaned it. So, who knows? Maybe it had babies.
Oh, don't. Nightmare fuel. I'll never get to sleep tonight.
It's fine. They live in my dice bag. It's fine.
I'm not so chill about it.
I see that Jay is trolling us.
Hi, Jay.
Oh, one of your viewers or one of your listeners?
That's my cousin.
Oh, okay.
Carlos is here too.
Our friends.
Hi, Carlos.
Jumping spiders, ghost popes. You guys have had time.
Well, like I said, this is what we're like off camera, off microphone as well. It's just this level of ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
That's how best friends are, though. Like when I get together with my best friend, and she only lives an hour away, so if we were able to visit, like every once in a while, I will call her over video, but we'll get together, and our husbands will just be like, We'll have whole conversations in movie quotes and song lyrics. It's great.
See, Fry and I have known each other for almost 15 years, and I've always come to see her when I come in person, but when we went to Boston for sound education, she was finally able to meet my husband in person, and they're like the same person.
They were just the same person. It was very strange.
Yeah, so it was interesting because I guess I never realized it as much because they're generally separate, but you put them together and I was like, oh, should I just leave? You guys are just the same person.
The exact same person is here.
Yeah, my brother-in-law got me a coffee mug that a couple Christmases ago that says, "You think I'm crazy? You should see my best friend."
That's one Fry would have.
I mean, I have enough mugs.
It's true.
Most of them have Nicolas Cage on them. It's a requirement.
Perfect.
I have a lot of coffee mugs and I have shot glasses. I don't even drink that often. So. I have a broken shot glass over here. This broke my heart. I had a really bad cavity once, and I got up in the middle of the night to take a shot of vodka because Advil wasn't working on the pain. Slight tangent, I know. It was like 1 a.m. I was desperate to sleep. And I broke my Green Ranger shot glass.
Oh no, not the Green Ranger.
I know, it was my favorite.
He's in charge.
And my husband has been trying to look for another one just by itself, but it came with a set, so I don't know. So this has just been sitting in my office.
You can get another set, and then you'll have double of everyone else except for the Green Ranger, and he'll be extra special.
I have met the Green Ranger. He's awesome. Went to Ohio Comic-Con a couple times, and he's so cool. Okay. So clearly, as we've kind of touched on, the history of the papacy is long and church history is complicated, and sometimes sources aren't the most reliable. So what are some challenges that Brie, you've encountered while researching?
So you've just hit on the story of my life right now. I am currently dealing with a period where the sources, so put this into context, I am dealing with a pope where something major happens, like world-shatteringly big for this pope. Something major happens, and we know for a fact that it happened. But because all of our sources are either the person directly involved, related to the person directly involved, or supported by the person directly involved, they just kind of like conveniently don't mention it. They just like leave it out entirely. It's this major thing that would be like the headline of the year. And everyone just kind of goes, I don't know what you're talking about. None of that ever happened. Everything is fine. And so I'm dealing with incredibly biased sources who are limiting the actual fact of what happened because of their own personal motives, which then means that I'm left trying to figure out why the heck this thing happened, and that is so major and so like we're going to talk about it, and it's going to be so shocking and so weird. I'm going to have to go, we don't know anything about this because it just doesn't exist in any of the sources. And it is probably one of the most challenging things that I've had to deal with to date. And I'm so lucky because I've been in contact with a couple scholars who've been amazing and are trying their best to get me any kind of source material for that time period from everywhere. And so I have like 4 people digging right now for a quote or something to just try and make sense of this something that happens that we know for sure happened, but nobody wants to talk about. It's driving me crazy.
Is it one of the popes that like, was it one of the Borgia popes that sleeps with his daughter or something like that?
Oh no, we're far away from that. This is something that should relatively be as big as that because it's like super scandalous and it's shocking and it kind of comes out of nowhere. But again, does it come out of nowhere because we don't know about it? You have to contextualize this thing that is so huge that just there's no hint of why.
Oof, that sounds rough.
I've been working on it for like 3 weeks, and I just I'll get there.
How do you know how to like what to cut? I mean, as this shows, we've been going on tangents. Fry, you have your work cut out for you.
No, it's not that bad. Honestly, I know what I need to cut out before we get to the editing process most of the time.
And if you hear us laughing at any point in the episode, know that it's been cut to about 1/10 of what it originally was.
Mm-hmm. It's usually awful. Like just constant chunks of us cackling at each other.
Gasping for breath, not able to breathe, coughing, just because we're laughing too hard.
Yeah, I remember you saying in a couple episodes you've gotten comments about that. And you're like, don't care.
Our silly giggling.
Silly giggling, yeah. That guy had an opinion.
Well, I'm not sorry about my uterus, so it's just he can be unhappy about it. We're gonna laugh and have fun the whole way through.
Did he have a problem with women in general?
The thing was he regularly listened to like Totalis Rankium and Rex Factor, and was definitely like, these guys and their jokes are so great, and like they laugh maybe about as much as we do, maybe slightly more, like nothing weird about it. But somehow silly giggling.
Our silly giggling makes us inexperienced, and it takes away from the subject matter. Cool man.
Some feelings.
History has to be amusing if it's going to be interesting.
It's theology, for goodness sakes. Do you know how hard it can be to make that interesting? If Fry's going to yell how you feel about that lambs at me to kind of summarize what I've just put before her, I'm going to take it.
Sometimes I say the weirdest things, and you'll be like, oh no, it weirdly ties in. And I'm like, oh, oops.
True. Always.
So Fry and I, we were talking before the thing about one thing we have in common is a deacon dad. And he's been a part of the show.
Yep.
Do you have other members of the clergy that are fans or perhaps critics?
Both. I know there's definitely a few priests, and I even spoke briefly with a monk who listened as well. So there definitely are fans of it, and I know that Deacon Dad's priest.
Oh, not the priest they have now.
The old priest
prior. He did. So their secretary would play us in the office at church.
Which is Fry's Aunt Mary.
No, that's not.
Oh, the other one. Okay, yes.
That's not my aunt at all. She was my 8th grade. 8th grade CCD teacher. Small town. But she listens to our podcast during work. So mom hears bits and pieces of it because mom's the treasurer in like a different room. And their priest, who was before the priest they have now, he did not appreciate it.
Which is extra amazing. I think that's so funny. I mean, it's because we have had, when we first started, our launch for our podcast was my bachelorette. So I was in Chicago visiting Fry. Yeah. And I got to meet Aunt Mary, who's Deacon Dad's sister.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Okay. Making sure I got it. And we were, and she also works in the church and at church.
She doesn't anymore, but she worked for a Catholic something.
Yeah. And we were telling her about our concept. And I remember we were sitting down, we were talking about how Peter was a douche. And she was so enthusiastically said, yeah, Peter really is a douche. And I knew that we were onto something. And so when I get those messages from people who either work in the church or are priests, I think it's the best thing ever. I know that we're all
that episode where I'm like, I know some people in religious life that might not appreciate that.
Well, I remember when somebody criticized us for making fun of every single religious person. I was like, man, that's a tall order. We don't have the energy for that. Like, there are some people we really like. So, but yeah. And I know that there's one in particular that church musicians really like us. So,
yeah, just because you find things amusing doesn't mean you're always making fun of them.
And that's just it. It makes me, if I can laugh at something, it makes me like it that much more.
Mm-hmm.
And like Pope Francis is keen on laughing at himself. And if we can't take his example, like I watched that man grandpa fall asleep in a chair at his own papal audience. And he was laughing about it and making fun of himself. So like, come on.
I wonder how much he was snickering at the ridiculousness when where was that in France when those people were calling for him to be excommunicated because what was that again? He basically he said that it was in support of the LGBT community.
Yeah. The staff was a rainbow staff, and so they were saying that he was propagating the gay agenda or something, and that he was secretly passing on homosexual messages. And I mean, man, they put a lot of time and thought into it, I guess.
And he's probably sitting there going, really? You have nothing better to do?
I don't think he can be bothered.
He doesn't even watch TV.
Yeah.
He doesn't care what these people think.
Yeah. Although I'd love to think that maybe he listens to podcasts.
He listens to the radio.
Well, and he doesn't really speak English. His English is not that great. So, but, fingers crossed. One day
you'll get it translated.
I know a guy.
Get the transcripts translated into other languages. Have it up on your website.
There we go.
Good idea.
That would take time, but yeah, being from Argentina, Spanish. 3 years.
His Italian is beautiful though. Like he speaks really well, and he speaks like Italian, Latin, Spanish, and like a whole bunch of other languages, and then he also speaks English. And then he's always like, "I'm sorry, my English isn't that good. Give me a break. I can barely get through a second language."
Yeah, I don't have 3 other languages under my belt. I only speak this one.
Yeah, I took 3 years of Spanish in high school. I got through with D's.
Oh.
It's amazing I graduated high school. Yeah, I have utmost respect for anybody who is multilingual.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't have an ear for it.
It's hard. It's hard picking up a language when you're an adult. It's so difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember hearing stories about my one great-grandfather who refused to learn English. He came from Poland. He refused to learn. He just saw no use for it.
Well, there's an idea.
Well, that was when everybody was still living in like their own cultural community. So everybody over here spoke Polish, and everybody here was Hungarian and Italian, and so you were with your own language speaking community. So
yeah,
it wasn't as necessary if people didn't branch out. Okay. Let's see if our viewers have any questions. It's gonna take a minute to pop up.
Yes, questions.
It's going to be a trolling question from Jay.
Yeah. He's probably been sitting on it and trying to come up with it to make sure he asks the most ridiculous question he can.
Christina says, I taught myself a fair amount of French in middle school, can only remember certain phrases now.
I took German in high school because it was either German or French were the offered languages. And I wrote my fluency in grade 12, but like now I can the only time I think about German is when I'm actually working on my Italian, because I always think of the German word first and go, no, that's not Italian. So it's only serving as a hindrance now as I'm trying to learn a completely different language. Because I'll always translate to German, then Italian.
I remember 8th grade, I was in a public school, and there was a class called Exploratory Language to kind of help you pick what you were going to take in high school. And it was 12 weeks of French, 12 weeks of German, 12 weeks of Spanish. And I actually liked the Spanish class when we were just learning vocabulary. Go to a Catholic school. They didn't have German. They had Latin.
Oh.
So I'm like, okay, if German would have been my other choice, just because I hated the French teacher that I had in 8th grade. She was horrible. But so I took Spanish, and it just was not. Once we got into vocabulary, or once we got into grammar, it was like, oh no.
I wish I had an opportunity to do Latin. I know that Duolingo has it now, but because, again, I'm trying to work on my Italian, which will become more useful later, I don't want to confuse the two. But having Latin while dealing with especially some of these earlier church sources would be particularly useful, because sometimes I'm looking at, in order to get information, I'm actually looking at like a tomb, and I'm trying to translate which pope this belongs to based on the Latin. And while a name will be there, sometimes it's not, here lies so-and-so. It's, this grave was built by so-and-so for someone else. And having Latin would make that a lot easier to get through.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have a question from Carlos. Besides Benedict XVI, have there been other popes to step down?
Yeah, there have been other popes to step down. We dealt with, I think, Pope Antares, who became our first pope to step down, and that was because he was about to be martyred. There's been several that have stepped down, and some of them have also been for voluntary reasons. The most famous pope to step down before Pope Benedict XVI was Celestine V, who just absolutely in no way, shape, or form wanted to be a pope. This was a man that they dragged out of hermitage. He was living out in the middle of nowhere, and all he wanted to do was be a hermit. And they're like, no, you have to be pope. And he's like, watch me resign. And so he did.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that on Overly Sarcastic, one of their episodes. There's 3 episodes called Pope Fights. And yeah, it was like they couldn't find anybody else, was basically, I think, was from what I remember. And so they're like, what's your first order of business? I want to be allowed to quit. Okay, what's next? I quit.
That's exactly what he did. And it's brilliant, because like no one could stop him. And it didn't work out great for him based on what comes next, because then, ironically, looking at what we're dealing with now, the pope who follows him is like, I feel like my legitimacy is in question because the last pope is still alive. And so that went an entirely different way than it did in the modern era. But he definitely made it clear that he was making a stand, and like, nope, you cannot make me do this. I will live in my cave, so help me God.
Yeah. Like, I wanted you to pick somebody, but not me. Why?
Yeah. Well, and he was very critical of the papacy as a whole as well. So that was particularly funny. Like, why did they want him so bad? I like him a lot. He's going to be a fun one to cover.
Okay. what other religious topics would interest you outside of popes, any religion?
Anything for you, Fry?
I'm tired of religion.
I love religion. I think religion is really fascinating as a subject. It's always something that I've been really, really enthusiastic about because I grew up in a home that wasn't super religious but was very pro-religion. So if I wanted to go to Catholic Mass with a friend, they're like, great, cool, have fun. If I wanted to go to a Baha'i faith circle, it was like, great, cool, have fun. So as a kid, I got to go and experience a lot of different religions. And it was usually with someone who was very excited about their faith and wanted to share that experience with me, going to Sikh weddings or a Hindu temple or anything like that. So I'm excited by all of them, but if I had to pick one to kind of focus more on as like a topic of history, I'm really, really fascinated by the history of Sikhism, particularly the 10 gurus, and then looking at the first Sikh emperor, Ranjit Singh, and looking at that religion because it's had a really interesting development because in a way similar to Christianity, when it starts, it's looked on very much as a cult. And it kind of becomes, for a while, it's very unassuming, but then there's this huge explosion of violence, which completely changes the way that the religion moves forward. And because of that militaristic aspect that comes with the last guru, it becomes a much different religion today. And looking at that development through things like Operation Blue Star and the partition, it's really an interesting and very complex topic with lots to talk about. It's a tangent I've been on many times. And if we're going to religions that don't exist anymore, I'm always really fascinated by the Heavenly Kingdom and the Taiping Rebellion because that's Jesus's Asian brother, man. Like, it's just weird, and it goes off in its own direction. So it led to one of the biggest massacres in the history of the world. So,
wow. Yeah, I've always been interested in other religions, and I didn't have quite, the experience that I did go to a non-denominational Bible study for a while when I was in college. It turned out to be a cult. I backed out of that real quick.
Cults are also super fascinating. I like that too.
When they started like making fun of me being Catholic and like criticizing everything, and I'm like, bye.
That sounds not very non-denominational.
Yeah, it was very much believe what we believe. Or
and I think it's so much cooler to be able to talk about that. Like another thing that I'm really into as a religious topic, not necessarily a religion, is I'm super duper fascinated by glossolalia, and I am obsessed with the idea of somebody speaking in tongues. I want to see this in my life, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful or sort of haha making fun of way. I'm so fascinated by that, and so I just really want to see it and experience that and be able to have a reaction to it. One day.
Yeah, just in the past year I've met because I've been participating a lot in the AuthorTube community, being shut up in my house, meeting people online. So I've met people and I've been reading about, and I mean, I have Muslim neighbors that are amazing and wonderful. I work at a Jewish nursing home, so that's been fun to learn about all of their holidays. They have a holiday for everything. And somebody explained one of their holidays, like they said most of their holidays are, one time somebody tried to wipe out the Jewish people and they didn't, so now we party.
Yeah.
I'm like, cool. Yeah. And I even have like friends who are pagan and Hindu and Buddhist, and it's like I've been learning about all of these different faiths, and it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's the coolest thing.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have a listener who is in Israel, and he sends me a lot of material about the different perspectives of different Christian moments in history that we're going to be looking at, but from the Jewish perspective. He sent me a really interesting thing to listen to about the Crusades from the Jewish perspective, and I'm really excited to kind of. I don't want to listen to it too soon because I'll forget it by the time we get there.
Don't forget that. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, it's gonna be cool. It's and like we're a while away from
that period, and the Jews and Muslims getting kicked out of Spain by Ferdinand and Isabella, and it's like,
well, the Reconquista is gonna be a whole bonus episode for sure. Like, I mean, we can't.
The Inquisition too, probably.
I feel like that's 10 bonus episodes. Sometimes I look at a topic and I'm like, that's just too much. We'll see how it goes. Like, it's just going to be like, I don't know. Even just looking at the Crusades, there are things that I look at and I go, I don't know how I'm going to deal with that, but that's a long way away. So by that time, I'll have figured it out.
We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. Or like the witch trials in Europe. That's always been a period I've been fascinated with.
And it's a funny thing because witch trials are so we think about witch trials being a Catholic phenomenon, but they're far more prevalent in Protestantism. And so looking at what a Catholic witch trial and a Protestant witch trial looks like is there's a lot to compare and contrast there. So
yeah, one of the King James the 6th/1st of France, of England and Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was big on the witch hunts.
Yeah. And Bri and I recently got to go to Salem together, and we did the kitschiest witch.
Oh my gosh, with Small Bean.
With Small Bean, and a host who was far more obsessed with vampires than what we were actually there to hear.
Oh my god, he just wanted to be like, oh, you guys, if you're a vampire, don't talk to me about being a vampire. I don't want to be propositioned by vampires.
History of Witchcraft podcast is actually how I heard about you guys, because I heard one of your ads.
That's Small Bean.
Yeah, that's Small Bean.
Yeah, because I write fantasy. And so I wanted to listen. I found his podcast, and I thought that, learning about historical witchcraft would help me get some ideas. And then I heard one of your ads, and you were talking about how the Harry Potter books were viewed by recent popes.
That was the first promo we ever did. Yeah, he was the first person to invite us to do a promo on their show.
Mm-hmm. So awesome. I found you guys, and I started, and then that's how it spiraled into Totalis Rankium, but I still haven't listened to the Emperor's podcast, but I've
so good.
I've listened. I'm all caught up on the presidents, and then Rex Factor I recently binged.
It's nice to know that we're sending people their way, because like when we got started, we kind of like had a couple months before we actually released our first episode to like create a lot of buzz. Mm-hmm. And both Rex Factor and Totalis Rankium, they were like so big on just like getting the word out. We had like 100 Twitter followers on our first announcement about what the show was going to be, because they were just like, go listen to these guys. And so it's nice knowing that even if it's smaller, we can send people their way too.
Yeah.
I would love to have them in one of my future spotlights, but this was hard enough to arrange with North American time zones.
Yeah, if you want them on, it's got to be like 3:00 in the afternoon.
When we did our anniversary special, we had like 5 different times.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was wild. It worked out.
It did. It was great.
And it looks like you've got a new fan.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Come join us, Christina. It's going to be a fun time.
I listen to so many podcasts. Just before, while I was waiting for you guys to hop on to StreamYard, I was telling Bri, listening to a Power Rangers audio drama. And my 9-year-old heart was very happy with the nostalgia. Because the voice actors sound a lot like the original cast, and I was just like,
well, and I think that's the coolest thing about podcasts is there is something for everyone. There's like a million different podcasts that are going to hit some version of your niche, whatever it is. And then you're going to find something else that kind of like tangentially relates to that. And you're going to end up with this like entire library of so many different multi-dimensional parts of your personality and interests and styles. And something for everybody.
My podcast feed is a lot of writing podcasts and a lot of history podcasts, because that's always been like my two big interests is fiction writing and history. And then recently I've been getting into audio dramas, and those are hard to find.
Good ones are hard to find sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. The one I'm just finishing up a second listen to is called 1865. And it focuses on Edwin Stanton mostly, who is Lincoln's Secretary of War.
I think the totalitarian.
And it leads up to the... Yeah, they did. Yeah. It leads up to the impeachment of Andrew Johnson. And not to get too political, but there are a lot of parallels to
topical
recent years. What has been the longest unedited episode to date?
Gregory.
Was Gregory longer than Liam?
Yeah, they were really close.
They were close.
Great. We had to... Leo, we actually pushed through and recorded in one go.
Oh, yeah. Greg had to be chopped up.
Yeah, because I was actually like actively losing my voice by like midpoint. It was like, no, okay, we need to break this up.
We gotta stop and do this a different day.
And there was also something that happened in the middle. I don't remember. Something happened with one of the kids, and Fry just disappeared for 17 minutes. So there's just like 17 minutes of audio of nothing, or of me. I think at one point I just started like...
I don't remember, and I'm not going to pull up my iTunes because my computer will get funky and slow. Was Gregory 2 episodes, or did you keep it to one? But you just recorded it in chunks.
I will be there before it goes into 2 parts.
Oh my god, I do remember I was gone for 17 minutes, and when I came back to edit, you were like, "This is affirmation that you're okay. I love you all."
Yeah, I was just like rambling in the background, stream of consciousness, like, you're gonna have to edit all this out. Listen to me typing on my keyboard.
It was so long, I forgot what happened.
I don't know. Was that spill? Maybe it was when like the basement flooded, like had the pipe burst.
Oh, that was stuff that was happening.
Something happened. It was
that's never fun.
No, Rowan screamed, and then you disappeared. You're like, I gotta go. And you just disappeared. And then I was like, are you okay? And so that's what it was. I remember it. And it turned out to be something minor, but you couldn't get it back. So that was in there too. And it's over 2.5 hours on the edited copy. So
well, I really don't think we can count 17 minutes where I disappear.
No, this is the edited copy is like 2 hours 30. So like if you unedited episode, forever. We're still recording that one.
It was the ghost that killed Sabine.
Eugene, get out of here.
It's always Eugene.
Eugene knocks stuff off shelves. You know, that happened recently too. We were recording and my Disney ears over here for no reason just leapt off the shelf at quite a distance. We're just like, Eugene!
Just because it all started when you were doing his episode. That's why you think it's him.
He's He's going to infect you now is what's going to happen.
Yeah, Eugene's going to start show because we recorded a collaboration with the History of the Papacy, and when Fry was dealing with Steve's audio, Steve had a lot of
ghosts.
I think my grandparents pop into my parents' house once in a while because I was Skyping with a friend one time. My best friend used to live in Virginia, and we would Skype all the time. And my bedroom was my grandmother's room. I moved in there after she passed away, and I kept getting this like weird feedback sound in my audio as we're talking. And just as a joke, I went, "Grandma, please, I'm talking," and it stopped.
I love it. Ghosts, man.
I love all that stuff.
Did he tell you what the ghosts were, or was he confused as well?
Oh, I didn't even send it to him. I was just like, it's Eugene. It's Eugene. We know what it is. Why ask?
All right, now Jay's bugging me elsewhere. He wants us to answer if we would ever do a podcast about cults.
They exist.
Oh, I must have missed
There's
that.
lots of them.
There's so many.
I mean, there's that podcast one that is vie professional, type of.
Well, and then we'd be competing with last podcast on the left, and whatever.
And it's kind of just the thing about cults is like what I'm fascinated by is more of the belief system of a cult and talking to people who are in a cult. There's a cult locally here that runs a deli for whatever reason. And it is always my aspiration to go and have cult sandwiches because you can go in and you can talk to them and they're like very open about the way they live and why they do what they do. And I want to sit down and talk to them. That would be interesting. But when cults become kind of podcasty, it starts going straight into true crime.
Yeah.
And that is not my jam.
Yeah.
But cult sandwiches, I will absolutely take somebody up on.
Yeah, no drinking the Kool-Aid.
No, just the sandwich.
Only a sandwich.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the group that I was sort of hanging out with when I was in college, and my parents would be like, "Don't drink the Kool-Aid." I never understood that reference until I actually looked it up and went, "Oh, shit."
Yeah. I mean, we're going to be dealing with lots of cults anyways, because cults of saints and we just recently, I think, again, in the episode that's about to come out, we're dealing with a guy who has this whole own view of angelology. And, so we're just, there's going to be so many cult adjacent people to what we're talking about.
Cult adjacent, yeah, I guess that, yeah.
I mean, you could call Savonarola his own cult, and well, that's going to be fun. So,
anybody else have questions? Andrew says, I have to listen to Eugene's episode again to understand this reference.
Well, we left it in. We left it in the audio.
He's a ghost.
I mean, I know Gregory was the ghost who killed Pope Sabinian, right? Because he came back, he was angry, whatever. But I think now it's canon in PontiFacts that it was Eugene.
Eugene does everything. If there's a ghost, it's got to be Eugene.
Well, yeah, exactly. He's going to show up multiple times. He'll show up in the guise of Gregory or something, but it'll always be Eugene.
Will you do an episode on the cult of saints?
I mean, we do have some on Patreon that we're covering, but I think eventually there will be at least something of that nature, right? Because it's such a big part of the way that they do religion that we'll have an overview at minimum, and then you can get into in-depth about the specific cults of specific saints on our Patreon, like Ginfor and
Ginfor is the best.
Well, you also really like Saint Roche with the sexy leg.
His sexy leg wound. I can't talk about him now. He came up so much at the beginning of 2020 that it was like,
yes. Well, it's because everyone kept saying that Saint Corona was the patron saint of pandemics, and it became a whole thing that we went in and clarified for people.
Yes. It was like, no, the sexy leg wound.
I'm missing a lot of stuff not being a patron. So Eugene is like Totalis Rankium's Roger. Who's Roger? Do they have a ghost?
Roger is their messenger, and he's lovely and delightful, and Eugene throws stuff off my shelves.
Does Roger show up in the Romans podcast? Because I haven't heard any reference to him. Okay, just on the Romans.
They at one point say that he's dead before the American series, because I think in Coolidge's episode, because I just heard it, they said, no, Roger's not here. He's dead. He died in 1604 or something. But I love Roger. I love the way that we at one point when we were first getting started talked about, like, what if we need to have like a Roger or a Jeff kind of figure, and we talked about Father Barnabas is kind of like this. You
originally wanted to make it Father Bernie, and I was like, that is not a name we can have. This is not allowed.
A real Father Bernie.
I do know a real Father Bernie. We grew up with him. He's the same age as me, and I'm like, can't have that.
My pastor is a month older than me.
Well, there's a stand-in Father Barnabas if we ever need him for something. It never just manifested in the same way, but he exists as a concept.
Andrew says he listens out of order. I couldn't, because there would be a reference to something in a previous episode, and I'd be like, what?
I mean, we've referenced things that we did that week that have no context to the podcast at all. Like, I killed her D&D character, and we just talk about that for a little bit.
Well, that's because in that episode I said I'm going to get all my bad rolls out before tonight, and then I rolled a critical fail and died instantly in D&D, so of course that came up. And then in our last session, we've done an entire episode on Patreon about angelology, and yes, that is what it's called. The study of angels is angelology, and she's running this game as a DM going, so what's the opposite of demonology? Celestialism? And I'm like, Fry, we did an entire episode about this. And when she remembered, then she lost it. Come on, we did this.
D&D sounds fun. My best friend did for Halloween. They had some friends over and did a haunted forest game, and they said they had so much fun, and I wish I could have gone, but one, I had to work that weekend, and two, look at what we're going through.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing about D&D. We did our entire anniversary special online. Everyone who played was in different areas of the world, so it's one of those things.
Can be done online, yeah.
You can bring it wherever you're going, and three of the people we had never played before.
Yeah,
so it's not too hard to pick up within the right context. I say that as the person who continues to not know all the rules.
That's fine. You don't need to know all the rules.
Yeah.
I barely know all the rules. I make up stuff. I'm in charge.
Oh, good to know.
D&D is Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
You must dungeon your dragons.
Please dungeon my dragons.
Sorry, I'm checking my Baby's finally down. Looks like husband won the battle about 20 minutes ago. Yeah, so because of you guys, like, I've caught some of like the references to the dice and stuff, and I love what you do with all the Pope Johns.
Oh, that worked out so perfectly.
The names, the nicknames.
Oh, I don't even remember. I was just like, I have something for this.
Yeah, because David of the Siècle podcast recommended that we do something to give them a nickname to make them more memorable. Mm-hmm. And I suggested it to you on air because we were just about to record our first John episode, and she just had it. And so it's now the way. And they just get
very innuendo heavy.
Yes, but not intentionally. That's just pure. Yeah. And we have multiple tables, but until we like start to see repetitions, we're still using the one. You know, we've got 23 John.
I haven't switched over to the other one yet.
Well, we've got 22. I mean, we're not going to get repeats quite yet, so.
They're both on the same page. So if I hate the name that comes up for one, I'll just switch over. You'll never know.
I will never know. This is the thing. This is true.
There's been, how many Johns have you had so far?
I have written up to John the 8th. How many? We've recorded up to.
There are a few back to back recently. Like
John we've recorded up to John the 7th.
Oh my God, 7th? I don't even know. I've forgotten how many Johns there are.
So many Johns.
So many Johns.
And there's a bunch of anti-Pope Johns too, so that helps.
Oh no.
Oh, should I roll on the other table for them?
Yes.
That'll
we get to them.
I haven't looked in the back of the demon book. They may have demon names.
Well, I suppose that would be appropriate.
I haven't gone and looked at the tables in the back there.
One thing that was cool was my parish is a Polish ethnic parish. And so when John Paul II was made a saint, we had a big thing. We got a screen and a projector, and we all gathered at like 4 a.m. Some people got together and made breakfast, and we watched it like happen from Rome. That was so cool.
It was a very historic moment, and one that, you know, it's interesting to think that we lived through that, and considering where the church is now and a lot of the discussion about Santo Subito, it'll be interesting to see if that becomes controversial in the future, especially in the last like couple months. So I don't know. It's really cool to think that we were there for that, and that he's one of the most historically significant popes, even if not all.
And we even have when he was still a cardinal, he came to Cleveland. I don't know when, and he stayed at the rectory at our parish, and so that bedroom is the JP2 room.
Of course. He came to the city I was born in before I was born. I in the 80s probably. And I remember my mom told me that she remembers when he came and how embarrassing she thought it was, because everyone, like, there's not a huge Catholic community here at all. And so everyone was going to see the Pope, but no one had like rosaries or anything like that. So everyone just bought Pope soap on a rope. And she was being so embarrassed that when he came to Abbotsford, everybody was shaking Pope soap on the rope at JP2. So
yeah, when we were in, I want to say she was still in junior high, maybe like 8th grade. Whenever World Youth Day was in Toronto, my best friend went, and she said they with her youth group, and they walked. That was when she learned, if you're going to go on a long walk, don't wear a skirt.
Huh.
Because they walked however long of a distance to go to mass.
I remember those people because it wasn't World Youth Day, but when I was there in Rome for the papal audience that we went to in August of 2018, they were having the world pilgrimage for altar servers. And so there were 60,000 altar servers that had come to Rome on pilgrimage all at once. And thank God they had their own papal audience thing, because otherwise they would have been at the one that I had to go to. But they were like, you couldn't go anywhere in Rome and stick out your arm this far without hitting someone in a straw fedora. And that was one of the altar servers' pilgrimage. And they were everywhere. Like, it was like a plague. It was just such an experience. So when I think of like World Youth Day and all these people walking around for it, I'm just like, oh, so many people.
Yeah. My husband is still an altar server.
I didn't know that was something you could do as an adult.
Yeah. When you don't have any kids in the parish to do it. We don't have a lot of kids, a lot of young families. It's a very large elderly community.
That's one thing I still don't know a lot about is like how a modern Catholic service is conducted. Like, I've been to some, but a long time ago. And so that's still something that's rather foreign to me as part of the experience. I could tell you a lot more about what Mass would have looked like in the 7th century than I could about what it looks like last week.
Mm-hmm. We have there's a very old school family that goes to my parish, and like the girls still wear like a veil on their head, and they all wear dresses, and they don't allow their daughters to be servers, just the boys. A lot of them have gone into religious life.
Well, yeah, that makes sense.
So
yeah, we have like a small convent of nuns and the one cathedral, and that's all I can think of. It's not big.
Andrew says, my alma mater was a Jesuit high school, so you better believe we got a holiday when Francis became Pope.
I remember that day. It was a cool day.
It wasn't that long ago, Brie.
No, it was 2013, but like this was long before we were doing anything like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was still like, folding laundry in my mom's bedroom.
Once the shock wore off that Benedict was stepping down, and it was like, wait, he can do that? What?
I was not shocked. I'm
no
still
surprised.
Nope.
That was before I started really keeping up with more news and of the world, and so like it was just like the Pope is there, and he's there till he dies, and that's just how it is. And then more things started coming out about things, and yeah.
Well, and we'll see if that's the case, because Pope Francis has also hinted heavily on many occasions, repeatedly, that he thinks that Benedict made the right move and that this should start a new tradition. He would like to retire rather than die in the role. So I think he'll wait till Benedict is gone so that there's not 2 retired emeritus popes, but he's made it clear that that is his goal, which I don't want to see.
I know. Yeah. And every time there's like something in the news about him having a health issue, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, I mean, he's in his 80s, but Benedict's 93, so we have more time.
I want to show up. Okay. We read the Inferno, so we definitely heard about Celestine stepping down and stuff.
Yeah, he's the great the coward who made the great sacrifice in the 5th circle of hell, off the top of my head. Antechamber of Hell. Antechamber of Hell.
I haven't read the Divine Comedy, so I don't know.
Basically, Dante was just mad because after Celestine stepped down, the Pope who would become Dante's mortal enemy became Pope.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of things about it. He was
salty man, salty man,
who decided to write a self-insert fic.
Yep, big time.
Jay's
try bring back purple hair.
Look, I haven't had a haircut since February.
Pandemic man.
So I don't know. Hair dye's expensive. It says
she looks more like our logo now.
Oh yeah. Except my hair is forever. It's fine.
I liked the purple. It was cool.
I'll get back there eventually.
Yeah.
I'm not going out. No one sees me.
I got a haircut fall of 2019, and I also went and like restocked a whole bunch of makeup because I had stuff from before I got married.
Oh.
Should probably throw that away. So I got all kinds of new stuff, and there's no point in doing a full face of makeup when you're wearing a mask.
Yep, I haven't left my house aside from one thing that was mandatory because I haven't left my house since like March. So, but you know, work face.
I still have to go to work, so
yeah.
I guess since I'm not medical staff, but I guess since I work at a nursing home, I am considered essential. Yeah. So I still gotta go in, and we gotta get tested twice a week.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It is a lot. My husband, he's been doing. He goes in and installs at film sets. For their HVAC before they actually get on set because he can't be around anyone right now because of eye health. So, but they are mandatory. They have to get tested every single day. Yeah, but it's all rapid testing here in BC now for the film sets anyway. So it's not the nose one. So
that's uncomfortable. But I haven't gotten the one yet that like touches your brain. So
yeah.
Hashtag medieval fanfiction. Got halfway through the Purgatorio and got stuck.
It's a hard read. Look, Dante is a beautiful writer in Italian because it flows. But when you're actually looking at it and trying to figure out the content of it, it's a hard read. I don't blame anybody who gets stuck because there's a lot of like just soliloquizing for like no reason. It's a lot.
I've seen videos summarizing it, but that's like my extent of my knowledge.
Well, that's the thing. It's kind of like a whole other trip. Like, hey, these men make up the eyes of the eagle, and it's Jupiter, and you know, it's just, what? It just, yeah. Every time we have to look at it, I'm like, how am I going to explain this to Fry?
Yeah, I've heard that in one of the summary videos I saw that when they get to heaven, it's like a trip.
Big time. Yeah. There's not as many popes that show up in heaven in the Divine Comedy as they are in hell. So at least we'll be dealing with the part that kind of sort of makes sense. Yeah. So.
Oh, the days of geocentrism and astrolabes. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, that'll be Pope. Where is it? Pope Sylvester too. I got a great book about the astrolabe there.
That's the weird science pope, right?
The necromancer man whose bones do the shaking. Yes.
The shaken bones.
I was just watching. I'm sad that it didn't make a second season because this was so fascinating. It was a kids show on Netflix. I was watching with my daughter, and she's 20 months, but she loves anything music. So it's this show called the Who Was Show, and these kids do like they talk about historical figures in their biographies, and they have a lot of music. Every historical figure gets a musical number. One of the characters that they did was Galileo. They had a Renaissance episode where they did Galileo and Queen Elizabeth the first.
I can think of better Renaissance figures. I know.
It was very sugar coated and kid friendly because I've read a lot about Queen Elizabeth and she had it rough. She also made it rough for a few people.
Well, also, yes. I highly recommend, if you haven't seen it, then on that note, Horrible Histories. It's a, yeah, I can see you're smiling, so you already know.
Yeah.
But it is definitely directed at a younger audience, and they also do these biography songs about historical figures. And their song about Pachacooty is Why My Dog is Named Pachacooty. And I will never not laugh at the Darwin song because it's ridiculous. So they're some of my favorite bits of like.
When I first started getting into Tudor history, I watched all of their terrible tutors on YouTube.
Yeah. They always leave Edward out. I mean, that's a whole other conversation you and I could have because I have so much to say about Edward VI. I think he's one of the most underrated historical figures, bar none. So I have lots to say about him. But this is a show about popes. And he was not of that particular persuasion.
Yeah, he was very fervently Protestant, wasn't? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Henry VIII was never entirely away from Catholic. He was only ever diet Catholic. He was never actually a Protestant. So
yeah, he was Protestant enough to get what he wanted, and then
a 9-year-old boy changed everything.
Yeah.
I will fight.
Somebody wrote. I forget the author's name, but she wrote. There's an autobiography of Henry VIII.
An autobiography?
Yeah, well, it's obviously historical fiction, but I forget the author's name. But I listened to the audiobook, and it is very. You see his ego.
Rightfully so.
Every little slight.
Well, it's good. I mean, there's lots of material to work with for that now. I mean,
yeah, you see Henry's ego, and I think it starts in like he starts talking about when he was like 3 years old and being made a Knight of the Garter and all of this stuff, and fantasizing about Catherine of Aragon when his brother married her, and like, dude, you were 10.
Well, that's the thing about historical fiction is there's so much room for interpretation. As I have a book for Fry to read, so she's going to learn that. When we get there,
a book to read.
A book to read, well, because we're going to talk about it. It's fiction. It's
okay. It'll be better than the Pope's granddaughter.
Well, everything. Almost everything is better than the Pope's granddaughter. So this is a book we're reading on Patreon. It is a how is it described? A papal erotic murder mystery.
Yeah, murder mystery. There we go. It started off real strong with some horrible necrophilia.
Full-blown necrophilia.
And it hasn't let up. Even a little.
Yeah. So, yeah, we're gearing up to read that again.
And for some reason, people are excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they've made it a Patreon part of their their privy council now, but the couple times that Ali on Rex Factor did his book reviews, and he mentioned reading some Philippa Gregory books, and I'm like, you want to talk about liberties taken?
Yeah.
She loves writing about the sexy times.
I have lots of thoughts on her, but that will be a whole other thoughts. I'll have to take at another time. You and I'll send you an email or a message or something, and we could talk about Philippa Gregory because feelings.
I have never finished one of her books, and I never plan to.
Good, because they're bad.
They're awful.
They're really bad.
Yeah, but the one movie adaptation that I saw was worse. When the Boleyn Girl came out.
Yeah.
I read the book and I'm like, but then, I mean, you are trying to cram 20 years of history into a 2-hour movie, so that is difficult.
It's not even her most egregious book, though, so, like, there's lots of room. There's lots of room for it to get worse.
Cousins War. Historical desktops and stupid deaths. The Putrid Pirates one, they had a couple good ones from historical histories. I think that's what it's called. It was their pirate one.
I think we've hit the end of our questions.
I think so. Anybody else got anything? Give it another minute. I'm looking between here and my phone because sometimes the chat pops up sooner. Or that's just my computer.
It's a good system. It works well to actually be able to go live on YouTube and on Facebook using the StreamYard. It's much easier.
Yeah.
If you want to do multi-platform, though, you do have to pay for it, which I'm not at that point yet. But I have my own Patreon if you want to help me get there. No. Oh. Thank you, Christina, for subscribing to my channel. Just got the alert.
For everybody who came and listened. I think that was awesome to have actual coming through and
yeah. What is this? Since you mentioned papal murder mysteries, one book I'm reading for Spanish practice.
I got no Spanish.
No.
I don't. What is that title in English?
Seville Communion.
D's in Spanish.
Drumskin.
No, it says it's a Seville Communion. It's a hacker breaks into the Pope's computer asking him to save from demolition a 17th century church in Seville. The Vatican then dispatches handsome Father Lorenzo Quart, who quickly attracts the attention of an aristocratic beauty embroiled in the affair.
Okay.
Wow. That sounds unnecessarily sexy.
Well, sometimes when you think it's going to be sexy, it's just full-blown necrophilia.
Necrophilia! Oh, no.
Yeah. Oh. And thank you, Andrew, for subscribing to my channel. I got the alert on that. Unnecessarily sexy. My sexy humor is often unnecessary. It definitely was the more prudish of my friends. Well, if there's no more questions, I guess we'll wrap it up because it's 12:30 for me and I have to work tomorrow.
Oh no. Why'd you stay up so late?
Well, we will definitely not keep you then. So thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining me. Everybody who's watching, thank you. And everybody who watches the replay, thank you. Social media links, Patreon, where you can find them on Spotify and iTunes, Apple Podcasts, whatever the heck it's called now. And Podbean are all linked in the description. Check them out. You've got 2.5 years of material to binge, so
almost 100 episodes.
Yeah.
Yay!
I said we had 117 or
bonus
something.
episodes.
Yeah, with the bonus.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
all right.
Thank you so much, and I'm gonna go to bed.
Thank you for having us, and thanks everybody for listening again.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, and I will have on social media when I get off my Twitter and Facebook break when the next one of these spotlights are going to be. It's going to need to be with my friend and fellow author tuber TM Sparrow. So that's going to be fun. We're going to have some mom author chats and maybe some writing. So thank you.
Thanks. Yep. Bye.